Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's virtual talk, part of an ongoing series from the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library that connects writers, historians, and TR scholars with all of you joining us from near and far, whether you're a lifelong TED head or just someone swinging by to learn something new. I am also delighted to report that tonight's broadcast will have ASL interpretation provided by ASL Interpreting Services. So thank you very much. My name is Marcy Whale, and I'm the Manager of Public Programs and Education. And tonight, I'm delighted to be joined by Nancy Churnin, author of A Teddy Bear for Emily and for President Roosevelt too. And as I introduce our featured guest here, I would like to ask folks where you're tuning in from. I am here in Medora, North Dakota, where it is a very nice 77 degrees, but it is quite windy. So feel free to weigh in on the chat where you're tuning in from today. We always love to see where our guests are located. And with that, I'll get to introducing tonight's guest. Nancy Churnin is an award-winning children's book author who writes about people who have made the world a better place and inspired children to be heroes and heroines too. A Teddy Bear for Emily and President Roosevelt II won the 2026 Christopher Award for affirming the highest values of the human spirit. So congratulations, Nancy. Additional honors for her books include the National Jewish Book Award, Sidney Taylor Honor and Notables, multiple books on the Bank Street College Best Children's Book List, a Best Book for a Global Society Notable, starred reviews from School Library Journal, Kirkus Reviews, and Publishers Weekly, and multiple state book lists. Nancy lives in North Texas, and her books come with free teacher guides, resources, and projects on her website, nancychurnin.com, that celebrate the great thing that kids can do. Now, before I turn the mic and the stage over to Nancy, I'd like to remind everyone to please feel free to drop questions in the chat throughout Nancy's talk. We'll circle back to them in our question and answers section after the speaking component. So with that, Nancy, I will turn the floor over to you.
Thank you so much, Marcy. It is such a joy and a pleasure to be here. And there's my slideshow. So here I'm just so thrilled to present this book about this truly great and kind president and the immigrant family that thanked him by creating the first Teddy's Bear. That was Teddy apostrophe S Bear because it was for Theodore Teddy Roosevelt. I am very grateful to the Christopher Awards for this award for this book. And they gave it to me for affirming the highest values of the human spirit, which I think is just so fitting for a book that is very much about President Theodore Roosevelt, because he very much affirmed the highest values of the human spirit. So this is a true story of kindness and gratitude about the Jewish immigrant family, again, that created the first Teddy's Bear to thank the kind President Theodore Teddy Roosevelt. Here is an image of that original teddy bear, the book, Morris Mitchum, The Immigrant, and of course the cartoon that started it all, the cartoon of the president saving a bear on a hunt. And this book about immigrants was written by the granddaughter of Jewish immigrants. There on the left, there's my Grandma Bessie and Grandpa Max. On the other side, my Grandma Mary, my Grandpa Sam. And also, the book is also dedicated to my bonus grandparents, Bernard and Clara. So to put this book in context, you have to remember that around the time that this happens, more than 25 million immigrants had come to the United States between 1880 and 1924. Approximately 1/10 of them, 2.5 to 3 million, were Jewish, like the Mitchums and my own grandparents. They were fleeing persecution from the Russian Empire and other countries. They arrived speaking Yiddish, and many settled in New York. The ones from Eastern Europe arrived speaking Yiddish, I should say. And they were thrilled to discover that then New York Governor Theodore Roosevelt, because he was governor before he was president. He was governor from 1899 to 1900. And later, when he became president, he welcomed them. He said it's a strange thing it's an outrage to discriminate. And he really welcomed all the immigrants, and they were so grateful to him. So you also have to put this act of thankfulness into that perspective. And I also want to give a little shout out here to my friend, Professor Miriam Udell, who helped me with the Yiddish, because even though I had Yiddish speaking grandparents, I remembered the Yiddish as a child would, and it wasn't always correct. But Professor Miriam Udell made sure that all the Yiddish that you'll hear in the book is correct. So our story starts in 1902. The Mitchums created Teddy's Bear November 18th, 1902. What else happened in 1902? Well, do you know that was the first National Bowling Championship? It was the first brain operation. It was the first full-time movie theater opened. That's right. The first publication of The Tale of Peter Rabbit, and the first The Wizard of Oz musical. The book was actually published in 1900. So that's where all the wicked things emanate from. And it also was a year that President Theodore Roosevelt became the first president to ride in an electric car. Yes, he was very much ahead of his time. Around 20,000 people lined the streets to watch the president ride a car powered by rechargeable batteries. It wasn't very fast, but here's the other cool thing about that. His police guards followed him on bicycles. Again, cars weren't very common. And that was the first presidential motorcade. Cool, huh? Another thing before we start reading is I wanted to give you a little, this'll is a little Yiddish. I am not going to read all these words, just a handful, but these are some of the words that you are going to hear in the story. It's sprinkled in there, and it's just to honor the language that this family came to America speaking, and to remind us again that they were immigrants. They were immigrants. They came in with a language. They learned English in addition to that, but they spoke a mix of things. And you'll know some words like, this won't appear in the story, but chutzpah is one of the more famous Yiddish words. And you'll also hear maybe less familiar words like tayra, dear, ziskai, darling. And since we're speaking Yiddish, maybe you'd like to know how the title of the book would have sounded in Yiddish. A teddy bear for Emily, und President Roosevelt euch. Okay. A teddy bear for Emily. Y'all ready for the book? Okay. While I turn the pages, I'm going to look on my own book so that the type is a little bigger for me. 1 minute, Mama and Papa were reading the newspaper. The next minute, Papa left for their candy shop in Brooklyn, and Mama hurried toward her basket of cloths and buttons with that look in her eye. Emily swallowed last bites of buttered toast and followed, wondering, why is Mama rushing to make a new toy? But all Emily asked was, may I help? Yes, mein Tyra, my dear, you are 9 now, big enough to help. Mama settled baby Benjamin on a blanket. Can you please hand me the velvet? Emily's mouth dropped open. Mama had been saving the velvet since... This is special, Mama? Very special, mein Ziskite, my darling. Can you hand me the scissors? As Mama snipped, 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 Benjamin fussed. Emily patted him and asked, are we making a cat? A dog? A bear? Mama held 2 pieces of cloth together. She turned the sides inside out so the velvet sides kissed. Emily had never seen Mama make a bear. I want to just remind you, this was 1902. Nobody made stuffed bears. Bears were big and scary. Emily asked, for Benjamin? Emily didn't dare ask if it could be for her, but Mama shook her head. Nein, mein Kind, no, my child. Can you hand me the needle, the thread? Mama's thread flew like a bird through the loop of the needle. She knotted the ends. Here, Mama said, handing it to Emily. This was a day of surprises. Mama sang to Benjamin while Emily's needle darted. Is it to sell? Emily loved seeing Mama's toys peek out among Papa's candies. Nein, mein Teure, Mama said. It's Teddy's bear. Teddy? Our president. Oh, now Emily was really confused. Why would President Theodore Roosevelt want a toy bear? Let me tell you a story. Mama wrapped the sleeping Benjamin in his blanket and drew close as Emily stitched. Once, long ago, before you were born, a boy with a big heart got on a boat to America. Morris, Emily interrupted. My papa? Yes, Tata, your papa. He was a few years older than you are now. His parents were sad, but they knew that Jewish people in Russia weren't safe in 1887. They hoped he'd find kindness in America. Mama nodded approvingly at Emily's stitches. On the boat, Morris clutched a toy his mother had sewn for him when he was small. A child with sad eyes looked at him. Morris hesitated, then handed the toy to her. Oh, she offered it back, but he shook his head. The girl's smile lit his heart. Oh, that's so like my papa. When Morris arrived in America, he had less than when he stepped on the boat, but he felt as if he had more because he knew he'd find kindness by being kind. Mama knotted threads. Emily trimmed hers. In America, Morris dreamed of owning a store with candies and toys for children. But first he had to work hard and learn English. Mama turned the cloth inside out so the velvet showed. Soft. Coin by coin, dollar by dollar, Morris saved enough to buy a shop at 404 Tompkins Avenue in Brooklyn. Then, ding! Rose Katz walked in looking for work. Good morning, she said. That was you, Mama. Mama nodded, face glowing. Emily helped Mama stuff the bear. Oh, I wonder if it tickles. Rose told Morris she too had fled danger in Russia. She shared how she wanted to work at the candy shop, bringing joy to children. Morris told her about his dream to make toys. He showed her cloths and sketches. I have ideas, but not skills, he told her. Ich kann sie machen. I could make those, she murmured. You did, Mama. Mama stitched the plump bear closed. Your papa and I married. We spent our honeymoon in our shop. Papa sketched. I brought his drawings to life with needle and thread. We had sweet children, including Emily, me, and Benjamin. Mama sewed a button on the bear's face. Is he winking at me? Then this happened. Mama pushed the newspaper toward Emily. Emily read that the president, who used to hunt wild animals, had spared a bear's life. Another act of kindness, she thought. Mama handed Emily the finished bear. Emily hugged it. She felt the love they'd sewn into it as she skipped alongside Mama to their store. Proudly, Papa put the bear in the window under the sign, Teddy's Bear. Dring, dring, dring. How much is Teddy's bear? Oh, he's not for sale, Emily's papa said. Dring, dring, dring. Dring, dring, dring. Dring, dring, dring. More people wanted to buy Teddy's bear. Papa said no again and again. Emily I don't know if the president wants us selling a bear with his name. Emily could see Papa was worried. What was it her parents told her to do when she didn't know the answer? Papa, why don't you ask him? Papa looked startled. Then he grinned. Of course, mine Emily. In 1902, there wasn't a quick way to get a message from New York City to the White House in Washington, D.C. And by the way, you know who called it the White House? President Roosevelt was the first one to call it the White House. The United States Postal Service used horse-drawn wagons. Papa packed the bear with a note offering it as a gift. Emily hoped the president's children would love the bear as much as she did and understand that Emily's family was thanking the president in their own language, the language of toys. Still, she worried. Would this powerful person read a request from a poor family in Brooklyn? As the horses clop, clop, clopped, Emily and her parents waited and waited and waited. Finally, a letter arrived. Emily's parents let her open it. Slowly, she read, "Yes! President Roosevelt didn't see how his name would help the bear, but they could use it." Oh, the president knew about running the country, but Emily's family knew what made kids happy. Mama sewed bears for Emily and Benjamin and many, many children. Emily helped. Soon, everywhere they looked, kids, including President Roosevelt's children, were comforting, and comforted by what they now called teddy bears. Emily was proud that her family was bringing kindness to so many children. In 1904, an equally proud President Roosevelt began showing teddy bears at White House events. In 1917, 30 years after Morris had arrived in New York as a hopeful teenager, he and Rose shuttered their candy shop to follow their new dream, making teddy bears to lighten hearts, to brighten hearts all over the world. And there's an author's note to tell you more, along with that quote from President Roosevelt about welcoming immigrants. And a little more background before we do questions and answers. The true story of the teddy bear, again, it all happened because President Theodore Roosevelt was on a hunting trip in Onward, Mississippi on November 14th, 1902, when he saved rather than shot a bear. And this cartoon appeared in the newspaper, John Berryman's cartoon. That's a cartoon, everybody was talking about it. And it just got made the Mitchums so happy, this act of kindness, and it inspired them to want to thank the president. The teddy bears became so popular that the Mitchums founded the Ideal Toy Company in 1907 to produce them as toys. And you know what? That wasn't the only toy they produced. You ever hear of the game Mousetrap or Kerplunk? How about Rubik's Cube? Yes, all of these toys were toys from the Ideal Toy Company. Oh, and you know what else? Emily, she married, and her husband became the company's president. And little Benjamin, who was 1 year old when all this happened, he eventually became the CEO of the whole company. How about that? The company, it doesn't exist anymore. It's since been sold to Mattel, but it had a very, very proud history. A little bit more about other teddy bears, because you've seen other teddy bears. This was the first, but Teddy's bear had a sibling. The Steiff bear was in Germany by Margaret Steiff, and that came over. So it was around the same time, but it was the Steiff bear. It wasn't the teddy bear, although I think later people were calling all the bears teddy bears. Winnie the Pooh comes later. Winnie the Pooh from A. Milne's poem, Teddy Bear. That was the original poem that that ended up giving birth to Winnie the Pooh after he got a name. Well, it's a whole story about how A. Milne's son, Christopher Robin, fell in love with a bear named Winnie at the London Zoo and added the name Pooh for pet swan. Paddington Bear, 1958, and a bear called Paddington by Michael Bond. And this is actually very touching because one of the things that inspired Michael Bond was seeing Jewish refugee children. So it goes back to those roots. But here they were the children of the Kindertransport being saved by English families. The Corduroy Bear comes around in 1968, a really charming book about a bear looking for a home. The Care Bears come along, capturing different emotions in 1981. Teddy Ruxpin, an electronic talking bear, and of course, the very popular Build-A-Bear, where kids make their own bears and put little hearts in them. Oh, and I love this picture of the Queen, the late great Queen Elizabeth with Paddington Bear. Now, teddy bears have a legacy of kindness. When you think about, again, teddy bears, how this all came about was, again, because President Roosevelt was kind to a bear. He saved the bear. When you think about bears, they used to frighten people. In Yiddish, the word for bear actually means strong. So when President Theodore Roosevelt spared the bear, it made people see bears differently, as a creature that needed and deserved protection. And maybe it's also a reminder that even when creatures or any of us seem strong, we're all vulnerable too. The vulnerable can be strong and the strong can be vulnerable. When the Mitchums created Teddy's Bear, they also gave children a chance to be protectors, to be kind as the president was kind, right? The president becomes an example of how to show kindness and to protect others. For children who feel vulnerable and identify with the bear that needs protection, cuddling them makes them feel strong and capable of caring for others. And you know, that's the interesting thing. When you care for others, you feel cared about too. I have a dear friend named Logan Fitzpatrick, and he has a medical condition that sends him to the hospital way too often. But when he goes, he always takes his teddy bear, whom he calls Harrod, with him. And the doctors are so kind, they even, put the surgical hat on Harrod. And so they share the experience, and this makes Logan feel brave, and he is brave. And so is Harrod. And people are due so much kindness because that in the spirit of these bears. I read about a woman whose teddy bear project sends teddy bears to kids to comfort children experiencing homelessness or abuse. I had a dear friend named Shana Vincent, and she does kindness projects every year. And one of her projects, she took her babies from the time they're small, bringing teddy bears to the children's hospitals. And I commissioned a teacher to create projects for the teddy bears. Another way to be kind is simply kind words. So this teacher, you will find these activities for free on Teachers Pay Teacher, and encouraging kids to send other kids message of kindness, telling them, you're the very best, you're very cool, or making up their own words of kindness to share with others. And I was so thrilled to learn about the kindness of the Theodore Roosevelt Association. They created this most amazing project, Teddy Bears for Kids. I have read that they have donated more than 90,000 teddy bears to kids with need. And you can go to the theodoroosevelt.org/teddy bears if you want to get involved and support those very kind efforts. I know President Roosevelt would be very proud of that. Is very proud. And in case you wanted to see my writing buddies, right in the middle there is Gloria Swanson. She thinks she's a star. She kind of is. And that's Toby the Terrible to the right. And you're saying, why is she calling him terrible? He looks so cute. I can guarantee you during this Zoom, he is in my favorite reading chair, clawing another hole in it. I love him to pieces. I love him to pieces, but he is kind of wild. And this is my dog. And I always like to ask you, you can think for a moment, take a moment to think what my dog might be named. I'll give you a minute. 1, 2, 3. You can shout out I can't hear you, but you can shout out the names. And then I will tell you that I asked my son to name the dog, and my dog named my dog Dog. I call her Mrs. Dog so that you know she's a girl. And then I couldn't resist, but here's one more cool fact from 1902. And this was another book of mine, the William Hoy story. I love how these things intersect. On May 16th, 1902, William Hoy, who was a deaf baseball player, could not hear. He was the leadoff hitter for the Cincinnati Reds, facing off against pitcher Luther Taylor of the New York Giants. It was the only time in baseball history that two deaf baseball players, played against each other in the major leagues. Hoy signed to Taylor, "I'm glad to see you," right? So happy, right? To see you. Very good. And he said that before scoring a hit to center field. Oh, yeah, he was very glad. Hoy got 1 run, 1 walk, and 2 hits off Taylor, did not strike out. But the Giants won the game, with Taylor getting credit for no earned runs. He struck out 4, only 1 walking 2. So they both ended up happy. And since we're talking about sign language, you want to know how to say teddy bear in sign language? Yeah, 2 little claws. That's right. Thank you. These are all my books. And it was such a joy to add this story of kindness. I always try to write about people who have changed the world for the better. And it was really my honor and privilege to write not only about these immigrants who created the bear, but the very kind and visionary president who inspired them with his kindness. And that's Gloria, who's wondering, what should I make her write about next? And here's a picture. And while I'm waiting for questions, I want to give you one quick little treat. Be right back. Okay, good one, Gloria. I told you she's the star of the show, so she did want to say hi to all of you. This is Gloria Swanson, my super muse. Thank you, Gloria, for all your help with the books.
Okay. I am bringing myself on stage to personally greet Gloria, who is a star, most assuredly, and to thank you, Nancy. Oh, gosh.
What a cat. Is it so sweet? This cat.
Nancy, you might be setting a new precedent for virtual programs that I will be requesting people to hoist their pet onto the screen, because that really just made my evening. So thank you.
You know, I bring Toby, but Toby would probably scratch the screen. He's also very cute, but he's very...
And as we all know, he's very busy scratching your favorite reading chair right now, so we'd hate to interrupt him.
Exactly. He has a job to do, and you have to. So.
Nancy, thank you so much for sharing a bit about your story and the process behind it, some of those fun facts. That was just wonderful to hear. You are such a talented reader, so you can please feel free to narrate books for me anytime, because you just had me the whole way. And I would like to drop in the chat, Nancy, of course, highlighted this in her talk, but she has wonderful resources for a lot of her different texts on her website. You can see the resources for A Teddy Bear for Emily and President Roosevelt too. Right here, it is in the comment section. So with that, Nancy, how do you feel about answering some questions from the studio audience?
Oh, I would love to. And I want to thank everybody in advance who tuned in, because it is my joy to share this story.
Yeah, I agree and concur. And we have got people from pretty much the entirety of the United States, from Los Angeles to Connecticut. and a good chunk of folks in North Dakota as well. So thank you all for tuning in. We're happy to see that coast to coast representation. So we will start off here. This is one from Alice. Why do you think bears in particular caught on as the most popular stuffed animal? I know they have the association of strength, as you highlighted in your program, but lions are strong, tigers are strong. What do you think about bears became so resonant in broader popular culture?
It's a great question. And I think, we have to go back to this story. I mean, stories are very compelling. People saw this story about President Roosevelt saving the bear in the newspaper, and it just changed the way they thought about bears. And I just think that it was that cartoon was very compelling. I mean, so again, it's the power of storytelling.
Mm.
Maybe if he had saved a lion or had saved a tiger cub, it could have been something else. But he happened to have saved a bear, and that bear, as depicted by John Berryman in that cartoon, I mean, it was like, people's hearts just melted. And I think also, I also love this expression, discordia concordis, things that don't seem to go together, but
Mm.
somehow then match so well. And I think because, again, a bear is something that always scared people. And then they could see that, oh, but this bear is just this little bear and it needed protection. And they saw the vulnerability of something that had previously scared them. It's like kids making friends with the monsters under the bed, right? It
Oh,
comes from a similar feeling. So yes, again, I think, yes, it could have been another strong creature, but I think it's very because of that story. But again, just that sense, we're protecting even the strong thing that seems strong needs our protection.
oh,
And I think it reminds us that we are all vulnerable and need protection.
oh, I love that, how it's both a confluence of factors from the story to the imagery to the Discordia Concordia.
Discordia concordis. I've always loved
Oh,
that
yeah.
expression because I think sometimes, I mean, it's sometimes just the most powerful things are the things that don't seem like they go together. But if you can make that connection, it's like sparking a fire,
Oh,
right? It's like rubbing two things together, and it just came together, and it was like
oh,
a conflagration of thought and heart. And really, I think President Roosevelt was very surprised. It was like, really? And then even he had to sort of, well, yeah, people are really liking this bear. Oh, and you find out that later, when Benjamin is head of CEO of this company, he does send President Roosevelt's grandchildren one of the original bears. And I wasn't like the bear, but I think it was like whatever they had, the original bears. And and they loved it so much.
oh,
Um, and I think eventually they donated to the Smithsonian, and you can see that bear at the Smithsonian now.
oh, wow.
But they love that bear.
Who wouldn't? Uh, Next question up here. What inspired you to write this story? And I'll tack on to this one because if people look at your corpus of text that you've written, there's a wide variety of topics from Martin Luther King Jr. to Charles Dickens, and here we have TR. So,
Yes.
where do you find that inspiration in particular with this one as well?
Well, it's a combination of things again. I'm always looking for, I mean, stories. You could see that this is a story about kindness. And for me, I'm always looking for stories about people that you might not know about, that kids might not know about otherwise. And people maybe weren't necessarily the biggest or the strongest, but um, they they were strong in their hearts and they changed the world for the better. Now I know that President Roosevelt is a mighty figure, and he's a big, strong figure, but the Mitchums are not, right? Then they own this little candy shop in Brooklyn, and they just wanted to thank the president, and so there's like a connection, right, between the two, and um, and why did I write this? So they seem to fit, and they wanted to spread kindness the way it also shows. Like it shows two things at once. It shows how a president, a leader, can inspire others to be kind or to show kindness. And it also shows how it can express kindness in our own ways. That's why Emily says their language, the language of toys. I mean, somebody else might express kindness with words, or with bringing a meal, and you can do all those things. They created a toy that you could cuddle and care for, and could be comforting, and that was their language of expression. Another reason I wrote it, I love teddy bears. I grew up with teddy bears, and I'm a curious person. So a bunch of my books are also simply about, where did that come from? Where did that come from? I wrote a book called Lila and the Jack-o'-lantern, Halloween Comes to America, because I was curious about why we even celebrate Halloween customs. And it was because of the Irish immigrants who brought their customs. I wrote called Valentine's for All, about Esther Howland, who created the first Valentine card company in the 1800s. She was trying to help others express big feelings, because not everybody is good with words. So, I mean, so curiosity drives me also, but ultimately it does matter to me, stories of friendship, stories of kindness, stories of connection. And I just love that President Roosevelt was supportive of immigrants.
Yes. And can you tell us more about maybe some of your historical research process that goes into these books that you write?
It varies so much depending on what's out there. So I know with this one, it was hard to find information about the Mitchell. I really go and kind of dig the genealogy of when they were born. I mean, it's funny, Benjamin the baby is sort of the best known because he became CEO of the company. But I had to go back because I wanted to find the parents and Emily and what happened to all of them. It was easier to find things like the Berryman cartoon. You actually had a lot of interesting information on the Theodore Roosevelt Association site. So newspaper articles, I'm a former journalist. So I'm used to looking at clips. And some of the people I write about, I've written about Irving Berlin, and you'll find a lot of books about Irving Berlin. So, I mean, I could go to scholars and read and check things. With William Hoy, who was a deaf baseball player, I had to go back, and I'm so thankful to my friend Steve Sandy, who is a deaf historian and a friend of the family. Oh yeah, very often if I can go back to the families, people, and again, newspaper clippings and articles, because not much had been written about him. And again, there's a lot about President Roosevelt, but not that much about the Mitchums or the actual creation of the bear. I mean, even there had been books about Berryman and the cartoon and the hunt, and the Mitchums is sometimes usually mentioned just like in a line. But I wanted to have the book about them, and the impact that, again, a great leader can have on people.
Wow. And that's such a fun and sometimes challenging process when the figures that you're sort of looking into and wanting to write about aren't as dominant in the historical narrative, and you have to do that sleuthing. And then what was it sort of like when you're like, okay, I've got this much to work with about the family that made the teddy bear? How do you develop that rich world of them around the text? What was that process like?
That is where, I do my research. So I have my facts that I'm working with. But the interesting thing for me is, on my journey, when I was a journalist, everything had to be from the outside in. You don't presume anything about what anybody's feeling. You have to be very careful about that. And it's, all built with observations, and everybody can come to their own conclusion. What I learned when I worked on my first children's book is that I have to write from the inside out. When I have to collect all that information, and then it's almost like going into a Zen place. Or I don't know, we have any Star Trek fans here? The mind meld. That's what you're kind of doing. And I have to sort of, what is this little 9-year-old girl feeling? And I try not to overstate it. I tried again to let the actions speak for themselves, but I have to know what she's feeling. I have to know, like, the surprise and the excitement and wondering and what will the president say. See, all these things happened, and I have to feel it through Emily. And you know what? I can't write the story if I can't feel it. So
Oh.
I have to be there. I remember, you mentioned about Charles Dickens, and
Mhm.
that was called Dear Mr. Dickens. And it's a true story of Eliza Davis, who wrote to Charles Dickens. And he had created harmful Jewish stereotypes, and she asked him in her letters to do better. And ultimately he did. He wrote his first kindly Jewish character, Mr. Rhea,
Mm.
in Our Mutual Friend, his last book. People aren't so aware of that. Um, but I remember when I shared it with my mother, and she was my dear mother, who she's still with us. She's 100 years old, but she has some dementia now. And she was just starting to have signs of dementia when that book came out. And she started asking me, did Charles Dickens answer your letter? She thought I had written the letter that
Yeah.
Eliza Davis had wrote. And in a way, there was a sadness to it because it was part of her beginning of dementia, but there was also something very sweet about it because I was trying to channel Eliza
Yeah.
Davis, and she felt that. She felt me in Eliza Davis, and to her, we were one. And
Wow.
that made me feel that I'd done what I had tried to do.
Oh, and how moving is that? Yeah, that you were so into that spirit of finding and embodying that story. Oh, that's special. Um, so one thing that you'll see across all of your texts are beautiful illustrations, like captivating, like emotive, just a very distinct sort of illustrative style. So how did you and Bethany Stancliffe determine the visual style for the illustrations in this book?
I have to give the credit for all of this both to my editor. My editor, Sue Tarski at Albert Whitman, was the one who acquired this book. And it's the editor who usually chooses
Oh.
illustrator. And most of my books are all by different illustrators. This
Mhm.
is the one exception. Bethany had also done Dear Mr. Dickens. As a matter of fact, I'll just grab it quickly.
Mm.
And so that you can see this is one of the very, and I have more than 20 books, and I only have, this is one of the few where I have the same illustrator. And I think it's because, and again, the other person gets the credit is just Bethany herself. And I think the reason why Sue wanted to go with Bethany, and I'm so thrilled that she did, is Bethany has the ability to convey a lot of emotion in what otherwise would be a static picture. I mean, just look at Emily's face. You are following. I mean, I don't have to say Emily is feeling this, Emily is feeling that. You can
Yeah.
see it. You can see it in her illustrations. Her excitement when Mama gives her her chance to do some of the sewing. Oh, wow. Look at that.
Mm.
And it's really, and I think maybe because Bethany is also inspired, she's a mom and she's inspired by
Mm.
her own children. She's told me that
Mm.
she kind of sees that through a mother's eyes, and for her doing a mother child, she has young children. So I think for her doing that, it's very personal.
Oh,
Identifies with the mother, but also she sees it through her child. And look how carefully
yeah.
attention she's giving. Oh no, it's just wonderful to work with. I mean, I didn't have to give Bethany any notes, honestly. I mean, she did it and she was off to the races. I think the only thing that I said was, I really think it's important to have that sign, Ted D's Bear apostrophe.
Mm.
Everyone needs to know that's what it originally was, that the first bear was at. That's the only thing I asked for. Other than that, all credit to Bethany. I don't take any credit for the illustrations, just that I was smart enough to be thrilled with them.
Oh, wonderful, and we're thrilled with them too.
Yes, you liked him too? Yeah.
Oh, they're just yeah, they're absolutely beautiful. And we have a rare question that sort of goes to me. This has never happened before. How did the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library discover Nancy Churnin's A Teddy Bear for Emily? And we at the TRPL are lucky to have the opportunity to reach out to authors who have written texts about Theodore Roosevelt or involving Theodore Roosevelt and inviting them on to our virtual programs. And so I believe that happened sometime last year, Nancy, before I was even with the company. And so I was delighted that one of the first people that I sort of started talking to about the virtual programs got to be Nancy. And we've been waiting for this virtual program for months. We were talking about that beforehand, about how we've been building up so much anticipation for this program. And now it's finally here. But we are so delighted to have had Nancy join us for this virtual program. And again, Nancy, congratulations so much on the award. The beautiful, substantial award for your text right there.
I'm
That's,
so thankful. Yes.
oh,
It's beautiful. And I just sort of feel it's so fitting for it to be for a book about Theodore Roosevelt, because I just think this is so much what he is about, affirming the highest values of the human spirit. I mean, I think that's what he did all his life, all his career, trying to make things better, trying to lift up the human spirit. And I wish I had the exact quote at my fingertips, but one of my favorite plays, The Skin of Our Teeth by Thornton Wilder, there's a wonderful quote from a great ancient philosopher, and it talks about, again, I'm paraphrasing because I don't have the quote at my fingertips, but how important it is to pick a leader with care, because every quality of the leader is magnified among the populace. And so in President Theodore Roosevelt, and even in this example, but in so many examples, but this is just one of many examples, in so many examples, because he was kind to others, it inspired the people in the country to emulate and want to be kind too. And I just think that was so important. And it was just such a matter. I was just so proud and happy to work on this book.
oh, Nancy, I do not think there was a better note for us to end on, because absolutely you believe that. We at the TRPL do it. Theodore Roosevelt espoused a number of values that we'd all like to strive towards, including, you can barely see it in my background here, live passionately, care deeply, dare greatly, think boldly. And so thank you, Nancy, for caring deeply and living passionately with us. This was a wonderful conversation. And listeners, if you liked this conversation, share it with a friend. We hope it sparks a good conversation of your own. And if there's other things that you want to share with your friend in a conversation, there are worse things to share than tickets to the TR Library, which are now on sale. So you can come see the landscape that inspired TR out here in the Western Badlands of North Dakota. So to learn more about our virtual programs, TR, and to start planning your visit to our beautiful space out here, you can visit us at our home on the web at trlibrary.com. And with that, we wish you a wonderful night, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.